Everyone, and welcome back to Stylish Naija YouTube channel. So in today's class, I'm going to show you guys how to draft this collar, this lapel jacket, yeah, with collar. That's what we're going to do. So these are the measurements that I'm going to be making use of for this tutorial. And then this is the fabric. It is a damask fabric. I have about 3 yards of that fabric there. So the first thing, we're going to draft the back piece. So I decided I shared this tutorial into two because I want to make it very detailed. So you see all of the cutting, all of the sewing, all of the finishing. So we're going to be doing an inseam just like a proper and actual jacket, okay? So that is why. So the first thing I did, I have some lines here. That is my shoulder line. So I measured my shoulder measurement, which is 14 divided by 2. And then I marked that point. So now I'm just trying to label the lines. That's the bust line, the waist, and then the full length of my jacket. So that on that line, I came down by 1 inch and then sloped it in. That's my shoulder measurement. So from that shoulder line that I sloped down, I marked 8 inches, which is half of my armhole. And then I connected it with a straight ruler. And then I'm going to rule it across. So this line, I'll just rule it all over. It will be my chest line, okay? So the next thing we are going to do now, we are going to add our dart. So for the dart, I'm using 9 inches. So I'll divide that 9 inches into 4. I'm marking it across all of the lines, my chest line, my bust line, my waist, and then the full length, of course. So I'm using a straight ruler to connect the lines. So this is my dart line. So I'm using half of my bust span measurement, like I said, divide that into 2. So the next thing we're going to do now, I'll take out the dart. I'll come to the waistline. So I'm taking out just 1 inch. I divide it into 2, half on one side and then half on the other side. So I'm going to connect that line to the bust point line so you can see what I'm trying to do. I'm just looking for a better way to place my pattern core rule, okay? So now I'm just like floating it into the waist part, okay? And then just connecting the dart lines, basically. That's what I'm trying to do. Okay, so now the next thing I'm going to do now, I want to take out my full body measurement. So I'll divide that bust measurement that I showed earlier into 4. I'll mark it on that point, and then I added 2 inches for my allowance, okay? So on that point, I'm going to take my half of this line that I have here, which is my armhole line. I just marked the half and then came out by 1/4 inch. So I'm trying to connect the lines together, okay? So I'll connect it just to make it sit properly. So the next thing now, I want to take out a dart for that center back so the back does not have a bulge. So I came out by half of an inch and then floated it into the chest line point, and then on the other down part, so I floated it into the down part also. So you can see how it looks like. So that part, we are going to cut all of this part off. Okay, so now let's continue. The next thing now, what I have on that chest line point, that's where I added my bust measurement. So I just extended it down. And then on this line, I'm going to measure my waist measurement, divide by 4. I marked that, and then remember our 1 inch, I put that back, and then I added my allowance, my stitching allowance. You can decide to do that, is optional, or you do it on the fabric. So from that point now, I'm going to connect it. I connected it, let it meet the waistline. And then from the top of my hip, because the jacket is going to be on top of my hip. So I measured that top of my hip measurement, divide by 4, and then I added allowance to it also. I marked it so you can see. So now coming up by just 1 inch. I just want to have a little bit of a curve there. I don't want it standing so straight, okay? So I've marked that. So the next thing now, I'm going to mark out my neckline. I took 3 inches width and then 1 inch depth. So just to create a neckline. And then from there, I'm marking the shoulder line. What is remaining on the shoulder line, I divide that into 2 and then just take the center and then connect it to the dart line just to give it a kind of, so you can decide to do a normal dart, but this makes it beautiful. So I'm just trying to label center back and center and side back, right? So that's it. So the next thing now, I'm just trying to check my camera before I cut. Okay, so now I'm trying to cut out everything. So you this is how you cut it. So I just wanted to show you guys. I didn't want to cut it out so you can see. And then so you cut out that part also, and then just take your time nicely and cut your patterns out. Okay, so now as you can see, so you can see it looks good. So that's for our back piece. Okay, so the next thing we're doing now is the front piece. So I have my pattern paper here. So on the front of my pattern paper, I'm going to mark about 4.5 inches. So you can see I'm just trying to mark 4.5 inches all across my lines. I already have my lines again, the same bust point line, waist, and then the top of the hip. So I'm trying to connect it with a ruler. So I'm just trying to double check to make sure that it is 4.5. That 4.5 is going to be for our lapel. You know, we have the jacket has a lapel. So I'm going to fold that in like that, and then before we start all of our measurements. So this part is where we are going to use for our lapel for the collar. So that is why I'm hiding it inside. And then the next thing we're going to do, I'm going to start taking all of my measurements again. So more basically, just like this back piece, that's what we are literally going to repeat. Okay. So from that point now, the next thing I'm going to do now, trying to measure out my shoulder measurement, divide by 2, 14, and then I'll place it like that. I added 1 inch as that, sorry, as allowance. So from that point, I'm just going to float that rather into my neckline point. And then from that point, I'll take half of my armhole, which is 8, and then I'll connect it with a straight ruler like that. Okay. So connecting it with a straight ruler, I will still rule the line. I'll just rule it straight. So that will now serve as my chest line. That's my chest line, my bust point line, like I said earlier, my waist, and then my full length. So the next thing we're going to do now, we're going to take out our dart, okay? So I'll mark my dart measurement, bust span divide by 2. I just marked it across the lines like I did initially. So I'm connecting it. So I stopped it at the bust point line, did not extend it to the chest, if you see. So the next thing I'm going to do now, I want to take out my full body measurement. So my bust measurement divide by 4, I placed it on my chest line and then added 2.5 inches allowance. So now what I want to do, I'll take half of that, my armhole line, and then just connect the lines with my curve like this. Okay. So I'm trying to connect it. So just connect it here. So after that, the next thing now, I have my bust line. So that's okay. So I extended it to my bust point line, that same line. You understand? Because the same thing that will be there. So now I'm taking out my full body measurement. So for the waist, because I added the waist measurement divide by 4 and 1 inch for that. And then I added my allowance. Okay. And then on the hip line also, I marked my measurement divide by 4 and then added my stitching allowance also. So now I'm going to connect all of those lines. Okay. So I've connected it. So the next thing is to take out the dart. Note that I've already added that 1 inch that I'm going to take for this dart now. I've added it. So from that, my bust points line, I'll come down by 2 inches on my bust points line. And then from the down part also, I'll come up by 2 inches. So now I'm going to float my dart into those points that I did like that. You know my dart, I'm taking out 1 inch dart. Okay. So you can see, so I'm connecting it to that 2 inch at the down part. Okay. So that's that for our dart. Okay, so you can see. So the next thing we're going to do now, take out my neck width, which is 3 inches wideness, and then I'll come down by 1 inch. Even though that is not going to be okay, before then I just mark that point. I'll leave it and then measure my shoulder measurement. Let's connect the dart first before we do the neckline. Okay, so I'll just connect the dart line to the shoulder to give it a shoulder dart pattern. So now open up my piece back, and then from that point I'll just extend the lines, that chest line. So for the neckline, I'm just going to come down by 1 inch for my neckline, which this is not the neckline that I'm going to be using. I'm just using this just like as a guide, okay? So I'll just connect it to the end of that part. Like I said, it's not necessary. You might decide not to do that. Okay, so the next thing now, I'll now take out my actual neckline now, which is 3 inches. I'll mark it from that top 3 inches. So I'm trying to navigate the curve. I see me turning my this thing around. So I've marked 3 inches now. So that's my actual neckline. Like that part that I'm canceling is not necessary, okay? So like I said, you can decide not to put it. So from this part, for me to do out my lapel, I'm going to use 1.5 inch. You can use 1 inch. Depends on how wide you want it to be. I want the button, that's for the button. I want it to lap. So that's why you can use 1 inch, but I'm using 1.5. So I'm just marking it across all of the lines like that. And then I'm going to connect it with a straight ruler, okay? So just extend the neckline. So I'll just use my rule now to connect it like that to the down. So like I said, you can use 1 inch, is optional. I just want my buttons, I want them to cover, I want it to cover properly. So that's why I'm doing that. That's why I use 1.5 inches. So I extended the neckline, okay? So the next thing now is for us to create, so you can see our piece is looking good. It's for us to create our lapel. So in creating our lapel, depends on how wide you want it to be. So for mine, I'm going to use about 1 inch, okay? So you can use 7.5, you can use half of an inch. But mine, I want it big, I want it to be obvious. So I use 1 inch. That is, I came out by 1 inch. So from that 1 inch point, I'm just going to take my ruler and then I'll connect it, just float it into the waistline. Okay, like just create like a V kind of, so you can see it, and then extend that part a little bit. Okay, so you can see it looks good, right? Yeah. So from that point, I'm going to put it at the edge of my neckline. I'll put my long ruler there, and then I'm going to connect it to that waistline. So you can see. So you can see that V now. That's going to be our flap, or our lapel. That's how simple and easy it is. So that part, I'm just trying to cut it out first. Like I said, it's not necessary. I'm just trying to cut it out. So now we're going to cut. Okay, so the first thing, I'll navigate the neckline points like this for you to see, and then I'm going to navigate that lapel area also for you to see. I decided not to fasten this part so that you can see how to cut it easily, and then the armhole line like this, and then the next thing, I'm going to cut this side like this. I was asking some people, I say, is it like so? So, so now I'm just trying to fold that part. So you see how you see my lapel came out. I want it bold. Yeah, I don't want a tiny lapel. So like I said, watch this video. In the next video, I'm going to show you guys how to sew, as in full seam, inseam finishing. That's what we are going to be doing for this tutorial. So I don't want to put everything in one place, then I will now be rushing. No, that's why I say I'm taking my time. So that when you watch this video and you practice it, you will be able to do it, to sew a jacket, a female, correct female jacket. So I'm just trying to label it. That's the center front and then the side front, guys. So we are done. So for the, if you notice, I did not shape the down part, but I'm going to do that when we are stitching. Okay, so you can see the front and then you can see the back. So in the next tutorial, we're going to cut the collar and the sleeve together in another part. So this is the back piece and then this is my fabric. So we're going to stop here for today. So guys, if you find this video helpful, please hit on the like button, and if you have not subscribed to my channel already, please subscribe. That's our fabric. So we are going to see you guys next. Bye bye.